Hi everyone, this is the full walkthrough video for our third Excel lab, our third and final Excel lab. So let me download the instructions and the starter file here. I'll double click on the instructions to open those up, but I'll keep it on my second screen. And as always, I'm going to start by renaming my file and getting rid of that 1 at the end of the file name and adding a 2. Then I'll go ahead and open it up. And I'll click Enable Editing so that I can start making changes. And you should see your name on that first sheet. And we just have one other sheet, the actual file that we're going to be working with for this lab. So the first instruction tells us to go to the sales worksheet and to rename it. So I'm going to right click on the sales tab and go to rename. And I'm going to add and dividends. As always, whenever you are typing something in manually, make sure that you are spelling everything exactly how the instructions say. So for example, make sure that you have a capital D at the beginning of dividends. All right, moving on to instruction number 2. We want to unfreeze column A so it is not displayed when you scroll horizontally. So as of right now, column A is locked or frozen in place. So there's not much that I can scroll to the side, but you can kind of see that as I scroll, only the columns B, C, D, and so on are moving when I scroll. A is frozen, so A is not going to scroll. And we just want to unfreeze that. So if we go to View, the View tab, this is where you can freeze panes. And if you click on it, unfreeze panes is one of the options. So this will just unfreeze everything. So I will go ahead and click on that, and now you can see there's less of a line in between A and B, and if I start scrolling back and forth here, you can see the column A is now moving side to side with it, along with everything else. All right, instruction number 3, we want to middle align and center align the contents of the merged cell A1. So I'll go ahead and click on A1, which we can see it's a big merged cell merged with several other cells. And I'll go back to the Home tab, and we want to middle align, which is going to be this button here. So I'll click that. That middle aligns it top to bottom. And then we want to center align, and that centers it left to right. So it's right in the very center now. All right, number 4 in cell I3. So let's go find that. Here is I3. We want to insert a formula, so I'll hit the equal sign, and we want to use the now function. So if I start typing now, we can see that function pops up as one of our options, and it tells us what it does. It returns the current date and time formatted as a date and time. And this function, we don't have to give it anything inside of its parentheses because it will always do the same thing. It just returns the current date and time. But all functions in Excel do need to have a set of parentheses. So you can just do an open parenthesis and a close parenthesis. We don't have to put anything inside of it. We can just hit the Enter key at this point. And that should give us the current date and time there. All right, instruction number 5. We want to fill the range C6 to G10. I'll highlight that momentarily just to see what that is. But we want to format that exactly how the range B6 to B10 is formatted. So these numbers here are all just regular general numbers, whereas the numbers in column B are formatted as an accounting number, where there's the $sign and there's commas in the numbers showing the thousands. So we want to take this range, B6 to B10, and use the format painter to grab the formatting from it. So I'll click that once, and now it's showing that we're copying something from these cells. We're only copying the formatting. And now while that is in this state, we have the format painter selected. Now I can select where I want to apply that formatting, which was C6 to G10. So I'll put my cursor in the middle of C6, hold down my left mouse button, and drag all the way over to G10. And then when I let go, it should apply that formatting, and all of these numbers should get $signs and commas, which that worked correctly. All right, number 6. We want to show the sales trend for each position and month from January to June. So in cell H6, so let me go ahead and select that cell. We want to insert a line sparkline. So under the Insert tab, there is this sparklines section where you can choose a line, sparkline, or column, or win/loss. So we're going to choose the line sparkline. And now we have things to fill in. So we have to choose the data that we want to plot on this line graph, which if we go back to the instruction 6A, we want our line sparkline to be based on the data in the range B6 to G6. So I will take my cursor and I'll go over and select B6 to G6 and let go, so that selection pops up there in the data that I want to graph. And then where do I want that sparkline to go? I want that to go in H6. That is already there for me because I had already selected that cell when I clicked on the line sparkline command. But in case you didn't, you can always go and change that yourself after the fact by just getting rid of what's there and then clicking on where you actually want that sparkline to go. And then once you have everything set, you can click OK, and now we have a nice little line graph within this cell that's based on these values, so we can very quickly and easily see that trend or the graph, and we can just visually see, has it gone up, has it gone down, was there a big dip or a big peak. All right, that was 6A. So 6B is that we want to copy that sparkline down. So a sparkline acts like how a formula does. So if I copy this down, it's not going to copy that same exact sparkline. It is going to get relative references. So in row 7, it's going to grab all of the numbers in row 7 and plot those, and so on. But as soon as you grab that fill handle and drag it down, you may notice that now we no longer have this nice demarcation of like a light orange row and then a dark orange row and then light and then dark and then a completely white row. It also copied the formatting, so it made all of these cells light orange because I copied this first cell down. So the instructions do say to fill it without formatting. So as soon as you drag that, you can go to this autofill and select fill without formatting. But first I'm just going to click off of this to show you very clearly that it copied the formatting and it made all of those light orange instead of keeping our nice rows. And if this stays here, you can change that, but in case that disappears, you can always just undo it until you just get back to the one, and you can just go over and do that again, and then make sure you choose fill without formatting in that autofill options there. All right, and I'm going to keep this selected because we're going to do a couple more things. 6C is that we want to change the color of the sparklines. So in this sparkline tab, I want to change the sparkline color. And I want to choose olive green text 2, which should be this one. And then 6D, we want to show a high point and a low point of our sparkline. So over here, there's this show section, and we can check any of these check boxes for the things that we want to show. So we want to show a high point, so I'll check that checkbox, and a low point, so I'll check that one as well. Now if I click off of it so we can see it better, we can see that there are now these red dots, 2 on each line, showing the high point and the low point on each sparkline. All right, instruction number 7. We want to copy the formula in cell I6. So there's that one, and we want to paste it in I7 through I10. So I can go ahead and just drag my fill handle down. But again, we only want to do the formula and number formatting. So if I come down here and I do fill without formatting, that didn't get rid of our number formatting, which is good. Everything is still accounting up here. But choosing fill without formatting makes it so we can keep our backgrounds, our background colors different for each row there. Okay. Instruction number 8. We want to determine how the sales of each month contribute to the total sales. So 8A in cell B13, and let me make this a little bit bigger here. In cell B13, why can't I click on it? That's weird. One moment, I might have to fix something here. That was strange. I ended up just grabbing my window and basically minimizing it and then maximizing it again. And now I can click on all the cells I need to. All right, so cell B13, I want to insert a formula. So I will go ahead and hit the equal sign, and we want to divide the total sales for January, which is B10. So let me go ahead and click on B10 to put that in my formula. We want to divide that by the total sales to date, which is cell I10. So I'll go ahead and click on that. Now, you might be thinking, if I'm going to take this formula and copy it down these rows, if it's just going to get the relative references, this reference to B10 in this cell will then become a reference to C10, and then so on, D, E, F, and G. But we want to divide each of these by the total. So this reference to I-10 has to always stay the same. It has to stay I-10 for all of these when we copy it. So that is why instruction 8b says to use an absolute reference to I-10. And if you remember, the absolute reference means that we are just going to put a $sign in front of the column, which is that I, and then in front of the row, which is that 10. So it should read $I, $10 for that reference to I-10. All right, and then I'll hit the equal sign to finish that formula. Then we can use the fill handle to copy that formula down the row here. And if you get actual numbers here, then you did it right with your absolute reference. If we had not used an absolute reference, then this cell would actually refer to J10, and then the formula in column D would refer to K10, and so on, and we would probably have a divide by 0 error. But if I click on each of these, we can see in column C, this one has a reference to C10, and then the reference to I10 stays the same. And as I click down the line here, we can see that the first number, that reference changes because we want that to go down the line. But the reference to I10 always stays the same. All right. So instruction number 9. So we want to figure out how many representative financial products we need to reach the goal of 20 products per month. So we are going to use the goal seek command to set the average number of product sales for all positions, which is in I-21. We want to set that to the value of 20 instead of what it is right now, 14. And we're going to do that by changing the average number of representative products, which is cell I-17. So we want to change I-17, right now at 0. We're going to change it to a different number so that I-21 becomes exactly 20. And I-21 has a formula. It's taking the average of I-17, I-18, I-19, and I-20. So it's taking the average of these 4 numbers. So we want a number in I-17 to, once this formula is calculated, we want I-21 to end up being 20 instead of 14. And we can use the goal seek command to do that calculation automatically for us without us having to figure that out. So that is, I believe, in data. Yes. Under the data tab in this forecast area is this what if analysis button. There are multiple options here, and we want this goal seek. And if you had your cursor on I-21 already, that will fill that first thing for you. But if not, you can always get rid of what's ever there and then click on I-21. So we want to set cell I-21 to the value of 20 by changing which cell we want to be changing I-17 to some number so that I-21 becomes the value of 20. So I can just click OK, and that starts calculating for me. And once it's done, it'll tell you that it found a solution, and you can just click OK. So now we can see instead of 0, we have 25 in I-17, and that made our value in I-21 20, which is what we were trying to do. All right, moving on to number 10. We want to format the text in cell J16. So right now we can't really read what's in there. So we are first going to merge and center the range J16 to J21. So I will select J16 all the way down to J21. And then in the Home tab is where we can find that Merge and Center button. So I'll go ahead and click on that. That merged all of those cells into a single cell and then centered our text in that cell. Next, 10B, we want to rotate the text so that it reads down. And in the Home tab in the Alignment section, there is this Orientation button here. If I click on that, I can find the Rotate Text Down button. And if I click on that, that rotated it 90 degrees so that it's now reading from top to bottom. And then the last thing is that we want to change the width of column J. So up here at the letter J, I'm going to right click, and then column width is one of those options. And we just want that to be 7. So then I'll click OK, and that snapped it to be a smaller size, so it kind of just fits nicely and proportionally within that merged cell there. All right, instruction number 11. We want to calculate the dividends earned each month, and that is dependent on the sales. So we have these total sales here for each month, and the dividends are dependent on those sales. So these sale values here, if it is greater than 200,000 in a month, the dividend is 30% of those sales. But if the company earns less than 200,000 in a month, which actually none of these months do, but if we did, that would be 25% of the sales. So we need an if function here. So we can say, if this value is 20,000 or 200,000 or more, then calculate 30%. Otherwise, if it's less than 200,000, calculate 25% of that sales for that month. So in cell B25, we are going to enter a formula. So I'll hit that equal sign, and we want to use that if function. So I'll type if, and then start my open parenthesis there. And we see a little template here. First is the logical test. That has to be something that's either true or false. Then we can have a comma, and then the value if the test is true, then a comma, and a value if the test is false. So our test is if the sales are 200,000 or greater. So, or if our sales are greater than or equal to 200,000. So I'll click on our sales in column B, which is that B21. So if our sales in B21 is greater than or equal to, so I want my greater than sign and my equal sign. So if the value in B21 is greater than or equal to 200,000, so 200,000, that is my test. So that is either going to be true or false. It's either true if it's greater than or equal to 200,000, or otherwise it's false. So that is my test. So now I can have a comma, and then I can put my value that I want this cell to be if that test I wrote is true. So if it's true and it is, my value is greater than or equal to 200,000, I want my dividend to be 30% of the sales, which means I'm going to take my sales, and I've been doing the wrong button, or the wrong cell, haven't I? So yeah, let me back it up. We're actually looking at the sales up here. These are the estimated sales down here. These up here are monthly sales. These are the actual sales, the actual numbers that happened. And your instructions do reference the correct cells. So B10 is what we actually want to be referencing. So if cell B10 is greater than or equal to 200,000, then the value in this cell should be our sales, which is B10, multiplied by 0.30. That will give us 30% if we multiply by 0.3. All right, so that is the value that we want our cell B25 to be if our test is true. And then if I add a comma here, now we can add our value that we want it to be if this is false. So if it's false, we want it to be 25%. So I'll click on B10 again because we want to take our sales and multiply it by 0.25 so that we get 25% of that sales. Then I can close my parentheses and then hit the Enter key. All right, and then I can use my fill handle here for that formula to fill in through column G. All right, and that was it for 11. So instruction number 12, we want to change the spark lines in H25 and H26. So I'm going to select both of those there and then go to the spark line tab that pops up at the top when I have some spark lines selected. And firstly, I want to change these column spark lines to line spark lines. So right up here we have the type. Right now they are column, so that column is selected, but I can click on line to change them to line spark lines. And then I want to apply a style. So in this style section, I can look in this drop down and we are looking for dark blue sparkline style dark number 6. Which the instructions tell us is the 6th column, 5th row. And you can hover over that and double check that the name is the same, dark blue, sparkline style, dark number 6. This is the one that we want, so I'll go ahead and click on that. That should just make your line slightly darker blue. It's not going to be a huge difference that you're going to see visually. All right. And then finally, instruction number 13, we want to delete row 35. So this row just has a little calculation there, but the instructions are telling us that this person's, Alexi's sheet here, that Alexi doesn't need it anymore. It was kind of just a reminder of the formula, but we don't need it, so we can just delete this row. So with one of the cells in row 35 selected, in the Home tab, I can come up to Delete right here and then choose Delete Rows. And that will get rid of that row. And that is it for this lab. So I will go ahead and save it and then close completely out of it. And then I will drag in my file into Cengage and then click Submit. And then we can double check and take a look at this graded report. And we got 100 out of 100, which is good. So that is it for this lab video. If you have any further questions after watching this video, or if you did exactly what I did and it's not working quite right on your computer, let me know. I can always manually grade your submission, or you can, if worse comes to worse, you can always email me your Excel file and I can manually grade it that way too. But you can always just ask a question as well, and I can hopefully try and help you troubleshoot if you do have any issues. All right, but that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you.